They mocked her burned jacket until a general froze at the Trident tattoo on her shoulder. The burnt remnants of Lena Reyes's jacket were mocked by strangers who saw only ashes and scars. To them, she was just a quiet woman carrying the weight of a forgotten past. What they didn't know was that beneath those charred fibers lay the silent legacy of a decorated Marine, a warrior whose faded Trident tattoo told stories of sacrifice, resilience, and battles fought in shadows. When the moment came, and a stern general's eyes fell on that tattoo, the mockery turned to stunned silence. And before I forget, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories reach. And if you're new here, consider subscribing to our channel so you don't miss tomorrow's special video. I guarantee you won't want to miss it. Now let's jump in. The sun hadn't yet climbed over the rooftops when Lena arrived at the town center. She walked with quiet steps, her boots muffled by the soft dust of the old concrete. In one hand, she held a folded paper, the job application notice posted on the community board 3 days prior. In the other, she gripped the frayed strap of an old canvas duffel bag, the kind that looked like it had stories sewn into the seams. And over her shoulders, a jacket, navy issue, charred on the left sleeve, melted in places, smelling faintly of salt, smoke, and something older, memory. She wore it anyway. It fit like the past she never spoke of. Lena was 23, maybe 24. Slender, quiet, with eyes that scanned but never lingered. She didn't speak unless someone asked her something, and even then, her answers were short, respectful. She moved like someone trained to take up less space than she deserved. The local volunteer recruitment drive was held at the Civic Hall. Tables set up. Banners of the reserves, National Guard, and Emergency Corps flapped gently in the breeze from portable fans. A line of mostly high school grads stood in front of a folding table marked logistics and support roles. Lena joined the line. She kept her head down. Her hair was tied up, loose strands curling around her face. Sweat pooled at her collar, and a few people around her gave curious glances toward her jacket. The burns, the stitched name tag, Reyes L., half melted, half visible. The young man behind her nudged his friend. Loud enough. Check out that jacket. Did she drag it through a barbecue? Laughter. She looks like she stole it off a trash fire. They weren't cruel exactly, just careless, confident in their place in the world. Lena didn't flinch. She just moved forward a step as the line advanced. The recruiter at the table was a former Marine named Simmons. Thick forearms, buzz cut, clipboard in hand. He paused as Lena approached. "Ma'am, we're looking for active and ready bodies. Don't take this the wrong way, but that jacket's seen better days." Someone behind her chuckled. Simmons raised a brow. "You military?" "No, sir," Lena said quietly. "Not officially anymore." He eyed her. "You're applying for logistics?" "Yes, sir." He tapped the clipboard. "All right, fill this out," and a voice interrupted him from behind. Sharp, commanding. "Hold up." Silence fell around the table. A general, older, broad-shouldered, crisp fatigues, had paused mid-step as he passed the recruitment station. He stared at Lena, more specifically at her left shoulder, where the charred jacket had fallen slightly open. There, faint but unmistakable, inked into her skin with the faded severity of old pain and honor, the Trident, the symbol of a Navy SEAL, a rank and calling not easily earned, and almost never forgotten. Simmons turned, his jaw locked. "General Dawes," he said stiffly. "Something wrong, sir?" But Dawes wasn't looking at him. He was still staring at the woman in the burned jacket. A deep furrow in his brow. His lips parted. He said only one word. "Reyes?" The crowd around the table went still. Even the soft hum of the overhead lights felt loud now. Lena's body shifted almost imperceptibly, a half-inch straightening of her spine. A glance to the side. Her eyes met General Dawes's, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Recognition. Memory. A fracture of time folding inward. Then, Lena nodded. Quietly. Respectfully. "Sir." The general blinked once. Just once. Then he stepped forward, slow, deliberate. Simmons stood frozen, watching this unfold like a man who had just realized he'd been addressing a ghost. "Your jacket," Dawes said softly, eyes never leaving her shoulder. It was reported destroyed. It was, Lena replied. And the one who wore it. Lena exhaled, but not through emotion, through control. The way someone trained to breathe slow through a dive or a breach. She wasn't expected to come back. A silence stretched long. It wasn't awkward. It was reverent. Behind her, the same young men who had mocked her were now stone-faced. One of them dropped his eyes. The other swallowed hard. General Dawes finally turned. Sergeant Simmons, is it? Yes, sir. You were about to deny a position to Petty Officer Lena Reyes. Task Force Orion. Former liaison to Tier 1 SEAL Team Ghost. His voice didn't rise, but it rang with a power honed by decades of command. She doesn't need a clipboard. She doesn't fill out applications. Simmons nodded stiffly. Understood, sir. Lena didn't move, didn't gloat, didn't even flinch. The general turned back to her. We thought you died in Bahrain. I almost did, she replied. But I had someone to come back to. He glanced at the duffel bag in her hand. Family. Lena nodded. My niece. She's 12. Lost her mom last year. I didn't want her to grow up wondering if there was someone who would show up when it mattered. Dawes took a deep breath. Not out of exhaustion, out of humility. His voice softened. You were the last one out of the fuel compound, weren't you? I read the debrief. Fire everywhere. Roof collapsed. You carried one of ours to the evac bird. I carried 3, Lena said, almost too quiet to hear. Someone behind her gasped. Dawes didn't smile. He just stared for a long moment. Where are you staying now? Small place off Quarry Road. Old family cabin. He nodded. If you ever need anything, Reyes, any of us, from command on down, you say the word. Lena nodded. I appreciate that, sir. And just like that, Dawes stepped back, gave her a slow, solemn salute, then left. No speeches, no ceremony, just respect, paid in full. Around her, the world seemed smaller. Not because she had grown, but because the illusion of who she was, or wasn't, had shattered. Simmons handed her the clipboard again. Ma'am, Reyes, would you still like to sign up for logistics? Lena gave a soft smile. No. She stepped away. I was never just logistics. The road out to Quarry Ridge was narrow, lined with cottonwoods and rust-colored fences warped by time and weather. Lena's old Jeep rattled over the gravel, a tired engine echoing softly under the thick canopy of trees. She preferred it this way, the quiet, the distance. The world out here didn't ask questions. It didn't prod at her scars or stare too long at the old burn marks that reached up her shoulder and across her collarbone. Out here, the only thing that ever looked too closely was the wind. The cabin sat on a rise, small and weathered. An American flag hung from the front porch, faded but intact. Inside, it smelled like cedar and black coffee. A picture frame on the mantel held a photograph, a little girl with bright eyes sitting on Lena's lap, both of them covered in flour from a birthday cake they'd baked too late at night. The girl's name was Maddie, her niece. She was the reason Lena had come back at all. After her sister passed, sudden stroke, no warning, no time, Lena had requested immediate leave. It turned into permanent separation. No medals, no fanfare, just one line in a file. Honorable discharge, family dependency. Some said it was a shame. Others said she had wasted her potential. But Lena had only ever heard one opinion that mattered. The day she walked into the hospital to pick up Maddie, the girl had looked up at her and said, "You're not my mom, but I think you're what I need." That was all it took. Back at the cabin now, Lena pulled off the jacket, gently, as always. She laid it over the back of a kitchen chair. The sleeve, still charred, folded inwards like it was trying to hide something. Maybe it was. Maybe it was tired too. She walked outside and leaned against the porch post. The wind was cooler up here. A bird called out somewhere across the trees. In the distance, she could just barely make out the sound of a school bus engine climbing the distant hills. Maddie would be home soon. Lena looked down at her shoulder. The Trident tattoo, once jet black, had softened with time, with healing. Still sharp, still proud, but quieter now. Like her, people at the recruitment center had stared at it, like it wasn't meant to be on someone like her. A woman, burned, civilian clothed, quiet. But Lena didn't wear it to be seen. She wore it because there were still names she carried beneath it. Names that never made it back. Brothers, sisters, ghosts who spoke to her in moments of silence and reminded her who she had once been. The world had moved on without her. But that didn't mean she was done with it. The school bus hissed to a stop at the bottom of the gravel hill. Maddie stepped off with a backpack too big for her shoulders and a sketchbook clutched tight to her chest. She didn't wave. She never did. But Lena knew her pace, knew that Maddie would always glance up once, just once, near the porch. A tiny check-in, like sonar. Confirmation, she's still there. And Lena always was. Homework heavy? Lena asked, holding the door open. Just algebra, Maddie muttered, brushing past. And someone threw yogurt at my locker. Lena raised an eyebrow. Again. They think it's funny, she said, voice low. Because I don't talk much. Because I said no when one of them asked if you were my mom. She dropped her sketchbook on the table, arms folded. I told them you were a seal. Lena looked at her, steady. I told you not to say that. Why? Lena didn't answer right away. She crossed the room and poured them both water, setting Maddie's glass gently beside the open sketchbook. The girl's drawings were good, better than good, actually. One page showed a silhouette of a woman standing in front of a fire. The jacket, unmistakably Lena's, clung to her frame like armor. Because that part of my life isn't who I am now, Lena said, slowly. It's not what defines me. What matters is that you're safe. That we're here. But they look at you like you don't matter, Maddie said. And I want them to know you do. The room went quiet. Outside, the wind pressed against the glass, then passed on. Lena's gaze dropped to her own hands. They were steady. They always were. But the weight of 1,000 hours spent holding pressure on bleeding wounds or signaling in pitch-black waters never really left. Sometimes, Lena said gently, the most powerful thing you can do is stay silent long enough for truth to speak for you. Maddie frowned, not entirely satisfied. But she didn't argue. That night, Lena tucked her in, the same way she always did, quietly, without fuss, without bedtime stories or singing. Just presence. A hand resting lightly on Maddie's back as she fell asleep. Later, out on the porch, she sat in the dark. Jacket around her shoulders. Coffee in hand. Watching. Because someone always notices. And that night, someone did. A black SUV slowed as it passed down Quarry Road. Tinted windows. No lights. No plates. It didn't stop. But it lingered just long enough. Lena stood up, slowly. She didn't chase it. Didn't call anyone. She just stepped inside and locked the door, not out of fear, but precision. Practice. She opened the old cedar trunk near the stairs. Inside, beneath a folded flag and a worn field journal, was something she hadn't touched in nearly 2 years. A tactical radio. Lena stared at it for a long moment, then closed the lid again. Not yet. The next morning, the breeze carried something Lena hadn't heard in a long time. A name. Whispered on the far side of town. Heard in the corner of a diner. Spoken behind the closed door of a local VA office. Soft at first, then repeated, as if people were confirming with each other. Did you hear she's back? Reyes. Lena Reyes. Yeah, that Reyes. It didn't start as gossip. It started as disbelief. Then curiosity. Then something closer to reverence. The town hadn't forgotten her exactly. They just hadn't expected to see her again. Lena had never worn her medals, never told stories. She wasn't the type to sit at the bar and brag about tours or firefights. She carried her history like a sealed envelope. Heavy, important, and not to be opened lightly. But now, her presence was making ripples. At the hardware store, Mr. Briggs, a retired corpsman, paused as he handed her a wrench. Didn't expect to see that jacket again, he muttered. It still fits, she replied simply. At the post office, someone stepped out of line and held the door for her. They didn't say anything, just nodded, eyes fixed on the edge of the burned sleeve. Maddie noticed it too. At school, teachers stopped asking her why her guardian never attended parent events. One even apologized, awkwardly, but sincerely. But not everyone welcomed the change. At the community board downtown, a new poster had gone up, Civil Service Career Fair, Open Interview Day. Below it, Someone had scrawled in red marker. No freeloaders. No charity cases. No has-beens. Lena saw it as she passed on her way to the grocer. She didn't stop. Didn't even blink. But two men sitting on a nearby bench exchanged glances. That her? Yeah, that's the one, the general saluted. They watched her go, their expressions unreadable. Back home that night, Maddie sat at the table, reading. Her sketchbook was open beside her, a new drawing in progress. The Trident symbol, inked with charcoal, emerging from smoke and shadow. Did you get the job? She asked without looking up. I didn't apply, Lena said. Maddie frowned. Why not? Lena sat down, setting a paper bag of groceries on the table. Because I've never needed someone to hand me a spot. I've always made my own. She meant it. But the truth was, something else had been on her mind all day. The SUV, the lingering stare, the radio in the cedar chest. She glanced toward the window. The breeze caught the edge of the curtain and lifted it, just enough to show the treetops swaying. It was subtle, but familiar, like being watched by someone trained not to be seen. Lena stood, moved to the porch, and there it was, folded carefully, placed at the edge of the railing. A black envelope. No markings. No stamp. Just a small, single-word note on the front, written in block ink. Valkyrie. Lena stared at the black envelope for a long moment. The name on the front, Valkyrie, wasn't hers anymore. Not officially. Not on any form, registry, or file that would surface in the civilian world. It was a code name, whispered only in the comms of missions gone silent. A name spoken once before things got loud. Or ended. She picked it up slowly, scanning the tree line. Whoever left it hadn't made a sound. That meant one of two things. Either they weren't a threat, or they were far too good to make mistakes. Back inside, Lena waited until Maddie had gone to bed before peeling the envelope open. No paper. No photos. Just a card the size of her palm. Matte black. Heat sealed with a thin foil layer that shimmered slightly under kitchen light. She ran her thumb along the edge and opened it. Inside, 3 words. Recall in effect. Below that, a string of numbers. A time. A frequency. And a final line that made her chest tighten. Discretion mandatory. Child cover granted. Lena's breath caught in her throat. They knew. They knew about Maddie. She pressed the card against her palm, hard, until her fingers trembled. Not because she was afraid. Because part of her had waited for this. Dreaded it. Expected it. But it wasn't fear. It was wait. Memories don't knock. They kicked the door open. She moved to the cedar trunk again. Opened it. This time, slower. No hesitation. The tactical radio was still there. The casing scratched, but the signal channels still labeled from the old ops. Kilo, 1, Dustwing, Ghost Echo. She flicked the selector to manual and dialed in the frequency. No sound at first. Just static. Then a voice, low and coded. Station confirm, Valkyrie. One-time ping. Bravo, 7 verification. Lena pressed the button. Valkyrie active. Bravo, 7 verified. Status. A pause. Then, high-value asset missing. Last known contact. Civilian contractor with ties to Operation Phantom Dust. Possible cross-border leak. You're not obligated. Lena cut in. But I'm the only one who can find him, aren't I? Another pause. Then the voice softened. We've lost for already. He was part of your extraction crew. He saved your life. She closed her eyes. Of course. Of course it would be him. Send packet. Tight channel. I'll scan. Copy. 1 hour. Radio will burn after sync. The line clicked dead. She set it down. Took a slow breath. Upstairs, Maddie stirred in her sleep. The creak of the old house reminding Lena that this world, this peace, was delicate, breakable, and now it was under threat. She walked outside again. The night was darker now. Even the stars felt cautious. Somewhere in the trees, something moved. A flicker, a shadow, a silent nod, then gone. A reminder, she was never truly alone. Not when the name, Valkyrie, still meant something. Not when the past came calling. And especially not when a jacket, even one half burned, still carried the scent of loyalty. By dawn, the packet had arrived. It wasn't digital. That would have left a trace. Instead, a small black satchel had been left beneath her Jeep, tucked against the wheel well, dusted with red clay to blend into the gravel. Inside, a hard drive, military grade, with a manual decrypt pad. Lena connected it to an old tablet in her attic, behind a makeshift RF shield she'd rigged from copper mesh and broken electronics. The file name blinked. Phantom_dust_redacted. She entered her clearance code, something she hadn't typed in 2 years. It still worked. The screen flashed once. Then a face appeared. She stiffened. Devlin Maris, former Tier 1 operator, specialist in tactical extraction and embedded recon. A man she knew only by call sign during most of her service, Dustwalker. He'd been her point man during the Bahrain compound fire, the last person she remembered dragging out before the roof collapsed. Back then, his right arm had been shattered from a blast. He'd begged her to leave him. She hadn't. And now he was missing. The file was sparse. Just grainy footage of Devlin crossing a dusty checkpoint somewhere near the Sierras, disguised as a civilian. Then gone. No comms. No trace. A digital blackout followed his last ping. The only connection? A phrase embedded in the final intercepted burst from his comm link. It's happening again. Dust moving. She leaned back in the attic chair. Heart steady. Mind racing. Phantom dust. The operation was supposed to be buried. Even inside Special Operations Command, only a handful of operatives had full clearance. The mission had involved deep cover sabotage, tactical extraction under diplomatic radar, and the unmasking of a corrupt contracting network embedded inside Allied command structures. It had ended with fires, bodies, and silence, but the scars lingered. Lena still had dreams, not of the mission, but of the moment it almost went wrong. The moment one breath later would have left her behind. Now it seemed those shadows were waking up again. Downstairs, she heard Maddie's feet hit the floor. The clink of a cereal bowl. The morning starting like any other. And Lena realized something. If she left now, Maddie would wake up one morning, alone. Just like before. Just like when her mother didn't come home. No, that wasn't an option. But neither was ignoring the mission. She needed help. Not a team. Not yet. Just a contact. Someone who still moved between the cracks. She pulled a small phone from the trunk. Satellite linked. Burn line. She scrolled to the only name stored. Tess, 05. A former intel handler. Quiet, brilliant, and loyal beyond reason. Lena hit call. It rang once. Then, you shouldn't be using this line. Lena didn't waste a second. I need an out route, child protection protocol, and background recon on Devlin Maris. He's gone. Phantom dust is stirring. Tess exhaled slowly. How deep are you in, Valkyrie? Just enough to know it's coming for me, too. A pause. Then we do this clean. Maddie didn't notice the shift at first. She still came home to warm meals, Lena's calm voice, and a house where the silence always felt safe. But there were small changes now, too small for most to see, but Maddie was sharp. She always had been. The locked drawer in Lena's desk was suddenly open. The Jeep had a new emergency pack in the back. And Lena, for the first time since moving here, had begun wearing her boots inside the house. Not to be rude. To be ready. That night, after Maddie went to bed, Lena sat outside on the porch, not sipping coffee, but waiting. The kind of stillness only someone trained in recon could maintain. Then, headlights. Soft, flickering. A gray sedan pulled up slowly. Tess stepped out. Short, sharp-featured, wrapped in a wool coat far too clean for this place. She scanned the tree lane like a hawk. Lena stood. They didn't embrace. They didn't need to. You've got 3 days, Tess said quietly. Then extraction lanes go cold. 3's enough. Tess handed over a folder. Thin, but dense with implications. New identities. Guardian transfer papers. Foster claim routed through a shell nonprofit. Maddie's covered. Lena hesitated. Her fingers didn't move to take the folder right away. She's not a package, Tess. I know. Tess replied, more gently now. But you can't move into what's coming if she's still in the line of fire. You taught me that. Lena finally took the file. She's never been a burden. Not even once. Tess looked toward the house. The lights were still on upstairs. Maddie's shadow moved across the curtain. She'll be safer than anyone else in this state, Tess said. But you should tell her something. Even if it's not everything. Lena nodded once. That night, she entered Maddie's room softly. The girl was sitting cross-legged on her bed, reading the same old fantasy novel she always brought back from the library. Lena sat on the edge of the bed. "Hey," she said. Maddie looked up. "Something wrong?" "No," Lena said, then paused. "Maybe. I need to go somewhere. Just for a little while." Maddie's shoulders stiffened. "Like a trip?" "Not that kind of trip." "Are you leaving me?" Lena shook her head. "I'm making sure you're protected. Some people I used to work with, they're going to help. You'll stay with someone we trust. But I don't want to be with someone else." "I know," Lena said, brushing a strand of hair behind Maddie's ear. "But the world's not always safe. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is trust someone to keep you safe while I handle the storm." Maddie's eyes filled. Lena didn't cry. She couldn't. Not yet. "You always said you were done with missions," Maddie whispered. Lena kissed her forehead. "I was. But sometimes the past doesn't stay buried." The briefing room was stark and small, a utilitarian space tucked deep inside a government building that smelled faintly of disinfectant and old paper. The low hum of the overhead fluorescent light filled the silence like a distant warning siren. There were no windows to let in daylight, no distractions. Just a cold metal table, 3 chairs, and the weight of decisions waiting to be made. Lena sat with a rigid posture, her hands resting lightly on the worn surface in front of her. To her right was Tess, sharp-eyed, sharp-tongued, the quiet force who had pulled her back into the world she'd tried to leave behind. And on her left sat a man she barely knew, but whose presence carried the unspoken authority of command, Captain Reyes. The shared last name was a coincidence, but it seemed to hold some unspoken significance. Lena caught his gaze once, and he offered a faint, respectful nod, an acknowledgement without intrusion. Captain Reyes cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "We've gone over the basics, but I want to be clear. Phantom Dust isn't just an operation, it's a web, a network of contractors, corrupted assets, and shadows within Allied command. Our intel suggests it's alive again. Active. Dangerous." Lena's eyes narrowed. She already knew the stakes, but hearing it confirmed in this sterile room made it more real. More urgent. "Dust Walker," she said quietly, using the call sign that had haunted her nights. "Devlin Maris. What's his status?" Captain Reyes shook his head slowly. "No contact since last week. The likelihood is he's captured. Interrogated. Possibly compromised." A hard silence fell. The kind that fills rooms where soldiers once fought together and lost together. Where names became more than words, they were promises. Lena's jaw clenched tightly. She thought of the fire in Bahrain, the smoke, the screams, the moments she carried Devlin out of a collapsing building. That memory, the last vivid scene before her own escape, tightened like a vice around her chest. The captain continued, "We need you back in the field. Not as Petty Officer Reyes or Valkyrie the SEAL. This time, no patches. No uniforms. Ghost. Silent. Your identity stays buried. It's not about glory, it's about survival." Lena looked to Tess, who gave the smallest nod. The weight of unspoken history lay between the two women, battles fought in silence, sacrifices known only to those who'd shared the darkest moments. "You won't be alone," Captain Reyes said. "You'll have full intel support, remote overwatch, and a tactical extraction team on standby. You're not walking into this blind." The faint sound of footsteps echoed outside. For a moment, Lena imagined the ghosts of her past, old teammates, fallen comrades, standing just beyond the door, waiting, watching. Then she asked, voice steady but edged with quiet urgency, "Maddie?" Captain Reyes's eyes softened. "Maddie is secured. We've arranged for a safe relocation facility. You'll be cleared for monitored weekly contact. No surprises." The mention of her niece brought a flicker of warmth to Lena's face, a fragile tether to the life she was fighting to protect. "But I need to know," Lena said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "If this goes sideways, if something happens to me, will she be safe? Will she be cared for?" Tess leaned forward, her eyes unwavering. "She will be. We've put protocols in place, more than just paperwork. Trusted people. Family." Lena swallowed hard. The thought of Maddie alone was unbearable. But this was the choice she'd made, the sacrifice for a chance to finish what she started. Captain Reyes added, "You're not the only one with ghosts in this room, Lena. But you're the only one who knows the terrain." Her hand brushed against the burned leather jacket folded carefully on the chair beside her. The weight of it was familiar, almost comforting. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Then I'm ready." The light above flickered for a moment. Outside, life carried on, indifferent and unaware. But inside that small room, a silent promise was made. Lena Reyes would answer the call once more. Lena's world shifted overnight. The quiet cabin, the worn trinkets of a simple life, all packed away into a duffel bag that felt heavier than it should. Inside, folded carefully, was the burned jacket. It smelled faintly of smoke and salt, the fabric scarred but still strong. Like her. Beside it, Maddie's sketchbook lay open to the page with the charcoal drawing of the Trident tattoo, a silent reminder of a past neither of them could forget. The early morning was pale and still when Lena kissed Maddie's forehead. The girl's eyes fluttered open, heavy with sleep and worry. No words were spoken, none needed. Maddie knew this departure was different. Lena's voice was a whisper, soft but steady. "Be brave, kid. I'll come back." Maddie nodded once. Silent, strong. As the car pulled away from the cabin, Lena felt the weight of everything pressed down on her. The life she was leaving behind, the dangers ahead, and the fierce responsibility of protecting Maddie's future. The city that greeted her was sharp and cold, an urban maze full of eyes and shadows. Every glance felt calculated, every street corner a potential threat. But Lena moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had been trained to blend in, to disappear at will. She met Captain Reyes at a nondescript cafe, the kind where no one noticed the sharp eyes and careful movements. There were no salutes, no formal introductions, just a nod heavy with respect and unspoken understanding. "Intel says the contractors are more organized than we expected," he said, voice low, eyes scanning the room as if the walls might listen. "They've embedded themselves deep. We're facing something more dangerous." Lena didn't flinch. "Then we have to be smarter, faster, more precise." Over the next days, she reached out to old contacts, operators who still moved in the shadows, who understood the language of silence and trust. Each meeting was a careful dance, filled with encrypted messages, hidden locations, and fleeting glances that said more than words ever could. The familiar tension settled in her muscles, an old friend she hadn't seen in years. The adrenaline mingled with the ache of time lost, of missions left unfinished and lives changed forever. But beneath it all, something new began to grow. This wasn't just a mission. It was a reclaiming of self, a reawakening of the Valkyrie who never truly left. As dusk settled over the city skyline, Lena Reyes stood still and ready, a shadow reborn, a quiet storm waiting to strike. The city at night was a different world, a quiet battlefield hidden beneath neon signs and shuttered storefronts. Shadows moved like whispers, and trust was the rarest currency. Lena moved through it all like a ghost, her steps measured, eyes scanning every reflection, every flicker of movement. Her contacts were scarce, but those she still had were loyal beyond words. Each one carried pieces of the puzzle she needed to solve, fragments of information whispered in secure channels and exchanged in hushed tones. Marcus was the first to meet her. Former communications specialist, his fingers still danced across keyboards like a pianist, pulling signals from the chaos of the digital ether. He ran a discreet surveillance network, eyes and ears in places where official eyes dared not reach. In a cramped back room, illuminated only by multiple monitors casting blue light onto his face, Marcus didn't waste time with pleasantries. "The contractors are shifting faster than we predicted," he said, eyes flicking over a digital map peppered with blinking red markers. "They've upgraded their encryption protocols, new communication tech, and they're hunting for you specifically. I'm picking up chatter about a Valkyrie." Lena's lips tightened. The call sign, once a secret among a select few, was now out in the open. That was dangerous. "They know who I am," she said quietly. Marcus nodded, his expression grim. Which means you're a threat. But it also means you're not invisible anymore. You've become a symbol. The word hung in the air, symbol. Not just a name whispered in covert ops. Not just a shadow, but a beacon. For some, a sign of hope. For others, a target. Lena's mind flicked back to Dustwalker. Devlin Maris, the man she'd pulled from the fire in Bahrain, who had vanished in the shadows since. Finding him wasn't just a mission anymore. It was a promise, one forged in blood and silence. Where do we start? She asked. Marcus pointed to a cluster of markers near the border, areas known for contractor activity, but now showing unusual patterns. They're moving assets across multiple checkpoints, trying to cover their tracks. But there's one node that's been unusually active, a safe house near the old industrial district. Lena nodded, absorbing every detail. I'll handle the rest. Outside their meeting, the city murmured with renewed interest. Quiet conversations in coffee shops. Glances held longer than before. Lena was no longer just the burn jacket woman who kept to herself. She was a story unfolding, a reminder of sacrifice and survival. One evening, as she waited for a contact in a corner diner, a young soldier approached her quietly. "Petty Officer Reyes?" he asked, voice low, reverent. She looked up, eyes meeting his briefly. "Yes." He swallowed hard. "Sir, it's an honor." She gave a faint nod. No words needed. The moment said enough. The stakes were rising. The game had changed. Every step forward had to be made with precision and care. Every silence was loaded with meaning. Respect wasn't given lightly anymore. It had to be earned again and again. And this time, Lena was ready to claim it fully, to make sure it stuck. The night settled thick and heavy around the safe house, a small, forgotten building pressed between shadows and forgotten streets. The only illumination came from a flickering overhead lamp and the cold glow of a tablet screen, casting harsh light on Lena's face. Tired, focused, resolute. The encrypted messages scrolling past were a torrent of intelligence, some fragmented, some urgent. Each line was a thread in the tangled web she was trying to unravel, a map leading toward a ghost, Devlin Maris, Dustwalker, the man she owed more than words. Her fingers brushed the faded Trident tattoo peeking from beneath her shirt sleeve, tracing its outline almost unconsciously. The ink was worn, softened by time and pain, but it remained a silent oath, a bond of loyalty, sacrifice, and unbroken honor. It reminded her who she was, and who she was fighting for. A quiet knock interrupted the room's tension. Tess entered, silent as ever, bearing a manila envelope thick with dossiers, maps, and new leads. The weight of it seemed to fill the room more than the flickering lamp. "We have a lead." Tessa's voice was low but steady, carrying the weight of years spent in shadows and secrets. Dustwalker's last confirmed sighting was near the border, close to the old mining routes. Someone reported movement, but no contact. "We believe he's hiding, but the contractors are hunting." Lena's breath hitched briefly, the name sending a ripple through the calm she tried to cultivate. Memories rushed back. The fire, the smoke, the moment she carried him out of collapsing ruins. Now, that memory was a beacon and a burden. "We need to move fast," Tess added. "The contractors have tightened their net. They know you're active again." Lena nodded without hesitation, eyes locked on the maps, memorizing every detail. Every path, every waypoint was a thread to follow, a hope to chase. But her mind wasn't just on the mission. "Maddie." Lena's voice was softer, the question hanging in the heavy air. Tess gave a faint smile, rare and warm in the grimness of their world. "She's safe and under constant watch. We've put every resource possible to protect her. You don't need to worry about that." For a fleeting moment, Lena allowed herself relief, a breath to hold in a storm. The fragile peace of knowing the girl she loved most was protected. Then her gaze hardened. The weight of her choice returned with full force. "This ends soon," she said, voice low but fierce. "One way or another. We've carried this too long." Tess nodded, her eyes steady and unwavering. "You're not alone in this." As the door closed behind Tess, Lena was left alone again, with the dark, with the silence, with the pressing urgency of what was to come. She stared out the rain-streaked window. The city lights blurred into streaks of gold and blue, fractured and distant. It was a world of chaos, uncertainty, and fragile hope. But here, in the quiet, a story waited to be told. A story written in silence and sacrifice. The story of a woman, her burned jacket folded carefully in the next room, and a faded tattoo on her shoulder that bore witness to the strength of the quiet and the power of truth. Lena Reyes was standing at a crossroads, between past and present, between silence and action, between a forgotten identity and a reckoning long overdue. And when she moved forward, as she would, the world would listen. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon as Lena moved silently through the outskirts of the city. The compound ahead was nondescript, an unremarkable stretch of concrete walls and chain-link fences, blending into the urban decay of the early morning. No flags waved here. No signs announced its purpose. It was a place meant to disappear into the background, just like the people who operated within. Her boots made no sound against the gravel as she approached the entrance, each step measured, deliberate. Years of military training had taught her the power of patience, control, and precision. Every movement was rehearsed, every breath steady. Inside the compound, a small group of operatives awaited her arrival. Their faces were worn, marked by time, hardship, and countless missions in the shadows. But there was an unmistakable fire in their eyes, the same quiet determination that had fueled Lena's own journey. They didn't greet her with words or fanfare. The respect was unspoken, conveyed through nods and the steady exchange of glances. This was a team bound by trust, experience, and a mission that transcended personal histories. Captain Reyes stepped forward, his expression grave but composed. He motioned Lena aside, his voice low and direct. "You're cleared for field operations. Intel confirms the contractors have increased their movements. They're closing in on Dustwalker's last known location near the border." Lena's eyes narrowed with cold resolve. "Then we find him. And we finish this." The team gathered around a steel table, where a rough map was spread out under the harsh overhead light. Fingers traced routes, exit points, and areas flagged as high risk. Tactical terms floated in the air: Overwatch, extraction point, calm silence. It was the language of survival, spoken fluently by those who knew the stakes all too well. As the briefing concluded, Lena folded her hands, taking a moment to steady herself. Her gaze drifted to the folded, burned jacket resting on a nearby chair, a quiet talisman of a past she carried silently, never flaunting, yet never forgetting. The jacket was more than fabric. It was memory, sacrifice, and identity. Her thoughts turned to Maddie, the girl safe miles away, tucked into a world free from the darkness Lena was about to re-enter. The weight of responsibility pressed down, but it was tempered by fierce love. Hours later, Lena sat inside a surveillance van parked a few blocks from the target zone. The glow from the monitors illuminated her face, the flicker of digital maps and encrypted comms blending into the rhythm of the night. Around her, whispers of conversation, low and urgent, filled the cramped space. Her fingers brushed the edge of the burned jacket beside her, a silent comfort amid the storm. The radio crackled softly. "Team, move out." Lena took a slow, deliberate breath. Her shoulders squared, and her eyes steeled with determination. She stepped out into the fading night. The quiet return, the mission to reclaim lost ground, lost allies, and lost honor, had begun. The operation unfolded with the kind of silent precision that only comes from years of training and trust. Darkness cloaked the abandoned warehouse on the edge of the industrial park, its rusted metal walls swallowing every whisper, every cautious step. The faint buzz of a generator thrummed low, a subtle heartbeat beneath the stillness, a reminder that danger was never far. Lena moved with practiced ease, her team flowing behind her like shadows. Every motion was deliberate, hands signaling, eyes scanning, muscles coiled in readiness. They slipped past guards, avoiding cameras and patrols with the grace of phantoms. Inside, the warehouse was a chaotic maze. Crates stacked to the ceiling, weapons caches lined up along dusty tables, encrypted devices blinking with coded messages, and hastily scrawled notes littering the floor. The air was thick with the scent of oil and rust, tinged with the metallic edge of danger. The team split, some securing exits, others sweeping for intel. Lena's fingers brushed the burnt leather of her jacket beneath her vest, a silent talisman, a reminder of who she was and what she fought for. Then, her eyes caught the glow of a monitor flickering in the corner. The screen showed a grainy feed, a figure moving weakly, bound but alive. "Devlin," she whispered, barely able to believe it. Devlin Maris, the man they'd feared lost, the one she'd dragged from the fire years ago, was alive. The air tightened around her chest, a mix of relief, urgency, and pain. Time seemed to slow as she watched him blink, recognize her face. Target secured. Lena's voice was steady over the comms, though her heart thundered. But the moment shattered with a shrill alarm. The contractors had been alerted. Lights flashed, sirens blared, and chaos exploded within the warehouse. Shadows became bullets. Movement was a blur. Lena's team shifted instantly, executing tactical maneuvers honed over countless missions. Covering fire suppressed advancing threats, while others moved Devlin toward the extraction point. Her breath was controlled, every muscle taut with focus. She met Devlin's gaze, a silent promise passing between them. Survival, no matter the cost. The extraction was a gauntlet. Narrow corridors, gunfire echoing like thunder, each step a gamble between safety and exposure. But discipline prevailed. Every member of the team moved as one, a unit forged in fire and resolve. Outside, the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, bathing the world in pale gold. Lena cradled Devlin's hand gently, feeling the tremor beneath the skin, the fragile pulse of life saved. In that quiet moment, the weight of their shared history anchored her, memories of fire, loss, and loyalty unbroken. The sting of the mission was more than the firefight. It was the stark reminder that some battles never truly end, that scars run deep, hidden beneath the surface, carried silently like a burned jacket and a faded tattoo. Lena whispered, "We're not done yet." And in the dawn's light, the fight continued. The base was a world of routines and whispers, the hum of machinery, the shuffle of boots across concrete, and the low murmur of voices that carried news both spoken and unspoken. Lena moved through this environment like a shadow, accustomed to blending in, her presence quiet but steady. She had long accepted her invisibility, the way her accomplishments often went unnoticed beneath the noise of a bustling military machine. But that had changed. The story of the burned jacket, the woman who had walked back into the fire and pulled Devlin Maris from the jaws of death, had begun to ripple through the base. Not as official reports, not as commendations pinned on a uniform, but as whispered legends told in mess halls, barracks, and quiet corners where respect was earned, not given. Lena heard the name Reyes more often now. There was a subtle shift in the air when she entered a room. Heads turned slightly, conversations hushed, eyes acknowledging her with a new understanding. She didn't seek it, didn't ask for recognition, but it settled around her like a quiet tide. One afternoon, as she made her way through the corridors, the usual rhythm of her steps was interrupted. A figure approached, the base commander, a general known for his unyielding discipline and sharp, discerning gaze. His reputation was one of steel and precision, a man who measured worth by deeds rather than words. He stopped in front of her, his eyes locking onto hers with a weight that made the air seem heavier. For a moment, he simply looked, longer than politeness required, quieter than any formal greeting. Then his eyes flicked down, catching sight of the faint outline of the faded Trident tattoo peeking from beneath the sleeve of her shirt. The symbol was subtle, but to those who understood, it spoke volumes. It was a mark of elite service, of unspoken sacrifice, and of battles fought in the shadows. The room around them seemed to pause. The general's face softened just enough to betray the respect he held. Without a word, he raised his hand in a salute, crisp, deliberate, and full of meaning. It was a gesture that carried the weight of honor, recognition, and unvoiced gratitude. Lena returned the salute, her own movements steady, dignified. A rare, faint smile brushed her lips, a quiet acknowledgement that this moment was more than ceremony. It was healing. No speeches were made, no medals pinned, just a mutual understanding between two warriors who knew the cost of service, the scars that never fully fade, and the strength found in quiet resilience. The general stepped back, his gaze lingering briefly before he turned and walked away. Lena stood still for a moment longer, feeling the unspoken bond settle deep within her, a reassurance that, at last, her story was seen. Not in flashbulbs or headlines, but in the solemn, powerful language of respect earned through action and endurance. In that silent recognition, the weight of the burned jacket felt lighter. The trident tattoo beneath her shirt was no longer a secret. It was a testament, a beacon, and a promise that her journey, and the battles yet to come, were acknowledged. The sun hung low over the horizon, casting a warm amber glow that stretched like a gentle hand across the quiet neighborhood where Lena's story had first begun. The streets were familiar, cracked sidewalks lined with old trees, the faint scent of freshly mowed grass, and the distant hum of children's laughter weaving through the evening air. It was a place filled with memories, some tender, some painful, all woven tightly into the fabric of her being. After the mission was over, after the quiet nods of recognition and the subtle shift in how others saw her, Lena found herself drawn back to this place. Not as a warrior cloaked in silence and scars, but as a woman seeking something she hadn't allowed herself to feel for a long time: home. Maddie was waiting on the porch, her silhouette framed by the soft light spilling from the open door. The years apart had left questions in the child's eyes, a mixture of worry, hope, and longing. But the moment Lena stepped forward, all uncertainty melted away. Maddie ran to her, arms opening wide, and Lena caught her, holding her tightly. It was a fragile reunion, stitched together by absence and yearning, but it carried a quiet power stronger than words. Neighbors passed by, their faces now lined with respect and understanding. They remembered the woman who once seemed distant, quiet, and marked by hardship. The woman whose burned jacket told stories none had dared to ask about. Now, as Lena moved through the street, those stories were no longer whispered with doubt or judgment, but with reverence and silent admiration. The jacket, once a symbol of loss and fire, was carefully folded away, tucked in a place reserved for memories. But the story it carried, of resilience, sacrifice, and unyielding strength, lived on in every glance, every nod, every whispered word shared in the quiet corners of the neighborhood. That evening, Lena settled on the worn wooden steps of the porch, the fading light catching the faint outline of the trident tattoo beneath her shirt sleeve. Her fingers traced the familiar shape gently, a silent tribute to the battles fought and the scars earned. The tattoo was more than ink. It was a testament to who she was, a reminder that even through pain and loss, strength endured. The breeze stirred softly, carrying the distant sounds of children playing, the faint rustle of leaves, and the steady rhythm of a world moving forward. In that moment, surrounded by the simple beauty of home, Lena felt a peace she hadn't known she was searching for. Her journey had been long, filled with shadows and silence, but it had led her here, back to where it all began. And in that return, she understood a profound truth. Honor was not only in the battles won or the medals earned, but in the courage to come home, to face the past, and embrace the future with quiet dignity. Lena Reyes, once a ghost in the shadows, a warrior marked by fire, now stood rooted in the light of a new beginning. Her story was no longer just about scars and struggle, but about resilience, love, and the unbreakable ties that bind us to where we belong. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of gold and crimson, Lena closed her eyes and breathed in the moment, a promise to herself, to Maddie, and to the life she was reclaiming. She was home. Thank you for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share your thoughts below. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Stay tuned for more immersive tactical stories.